Thanks very much, Don. It's great to be with you this morning. I appreciate those words about the use of Parliament House. It is a fantastic venue and really just the whole construct of it, being able to open up that great hall to allow people to mix and mingle and network and have a few drinks. I'm glad everyone enjoyed the hospitality. I'm looking at the numbers in the room. Probably a few people enjoyed the hospitality more than others did. So we're probably a few slow starters this morning, but that's perfectly all right. Look, I just want to acknowledge a few people. David Galvin, the Live Corp Chairman, and particularly our visitors from Indonesia and also from Vietnam. Good morning to you all and fantastic to be here. For those who I didn't get to catch up with last night, welcome to Darwin. I hope you're enjoying not only the conference but the Darwin itself. There's some great opportunities up here and some terrific places to go and visit, and I hope you have some time to do just that. I appreciate that many of you have travelled a great distance, and obviously many from interstate, but also those internationally, to share your knowledge and your experience at this terrific event. The theme, of course, as I mentioned last night, of this 2015 biennial LIVEXchange conference has a focus on people and their strong networking abilities to provide a resilient and successful supply chain for the live export trade. A testament to the great success of the live cattle export industry is that it has been operating for over 30 years. And I say over 30, I'm not quite sure exactly how long, but certainly for a very long time, probably not quite as long as 40. And of course the industry continues to go from strength to strength. The Northern Territory Government, hand in hand with industry, has strengthened new and existing markets and rebuilt confidence throughout the supply chain. And I'd hazard a guess to say that confidence in the industry has never been so high. Everywhere I go, everyone I talk to talks about how good things are at the moment and that they're really looking at blue sky. And that's a wonderful bit of feedback for me, knowing that the efforts that I put in, that the government's put in to support the industry, are instilling in those people who work in the industry such a positive attitude. So hopefully things will continue to go well. There's obviously a lot to be positive about in relation to the live export industry. In fact, the biggest worry now is for exporters how they might fill quotas, and as I said last night, not a bad problem to have. The value of production of territory live cattle exports is estimated at about $230 million, and interstate movements of territory cattle valued at around $100 million. Now, the NT government, along with the federal government, is committed to developing Northern Australia. And I'm really proud to be able to say, and put hand on heart when I say it, that the Northern Territory government really has led the way in the push to develop Northern Australia. So much so that, of course, we've had an Office of Northern Development staffed through the Northern Territory government, and very, very pleasing that the Australian government has decided to set up their Office of Northern Development up here in Darwin, and I think that's a testament to not only the hard work that the NT government has put into this space, but a real recognition by the Australian government that Darwin is the right place to be the capital of this push to develop Northern Australia. With food exports being a key component of this plan, we recognise the tremendous potential to expand both export and domestic markets for our products. Increased food production is a key pillar for the Northern Territory's economic future, and we believe that three factors will contribute directly to this goal, and they are improved market access for increased live exports, growth in our animal industries, and also growth in our plant industries. Cattle production is the Territory's principal land-based rural industry, and live cattle export is our largest agricultural export commodity. There are many people behind the livestock export industry that have worked hard to increase the value of production of Territory live cattle exports, and it hasn't come all down to government. It's been a collaborative approach between the government and industry in so many areas. The industry makes up approximately 42% of Australian live cattle exports, with the Northern Territory the largest supplier of live cattle and buffalo, with approximately 543,000 head of territory cattle and about 5,000 head of buffalo exported in 2014. Primary industry, in particular the live export and pastoral industries, as I said, are substantial contributors to our economy, and the NT government strongly supports the Territory's beef cattle and live export industries. And I will again go on record and say that I personally am a huge supporter of live export. I believe that at least, well, probably I was going to say in the medium term, but probably well into the long term, that live export is an industry that will continue to be critically important to the Northern Territory's economy, critically important to the development of Northern Australia, but also critically important to fill the demand for growing protein in our Southeast Asian neighbour countries, and of course contributing to their food security. By way of background, cattle production is the Territory's principal land-based industry, with 223 pastoral leases in the Territory, covering approximately 600,000 square kilometres, or 44% of our land mass. It's largely composed of what you'd call rangelands, supporting, of course, a herd of about 2 million cattle. Around 500,000 to 600,000 head of cattle per year are turned off for finishing and processing in both the live interstate and export markets. Cattle in the north of the Territory are generally produced for the live export market, and there's been a huge amount of research and breeding programs undertaken over the past 30 or 40 years to make that happen, while cattle in the south are predominantly destined for the southern and eastern Australian domestic markets. And once again, a huge amount of work has gone into making sure that those cattle are suitable and prime for that type of market. We are a trusted and reliable supplier of safe, high-quality cattle that are widely accessible to domestic and export markets. Our world-class biosecurity and compliance are essential to this, and we will continue to work hard to protect our reputation. Asia's increasing middle-class population and associated higher meat consumption, combined with the Territory's proximity to Southeast Asia, means that we are well placed to assist in meeting their increased demand for higher quality protein. This growing consumer group will also demand high quality food products, other food products besides beef of course, and the Territory Government wants to make sure that Northern Australia benefits from investment in that demand. And even though I'm not going to talk about it in any great depth, but what I'm referring to there largely is diversification on our pastoral leases, which has now been made possible through changes to legislation we enacted as of the 1st of January last year. The process of breeding high-quality animals in North Australian rangelands and then fattening them at lower cost through using agricultural byproducts available in Southeast Asia is no doubt a win-win situation. Northern Australia's proximity to Asia's growing middle class is our greatest opportunity, but also our greatest challenge. It is for these reasons that my Department of Primary Industry and Fisheries undertook a restructure last year to enhance its ability to support food industry development. We are building on our strong record of providing industry with effective research, extension and biosecurity by taking a more strategic approach to food industry development with a focus on market and enterprise development and attracting investment to support industry growth. And I'm going to repeat that because it's pretty important. So our focus in the past has largely been around those traditional things that departments do, providing research and extension, but our focus now has moved and it's moved more towards enterprise development. It's working directly with pastoralists and the agricultural sector to get more out of their enterprise. We've moved our focus more towards attracting investment into the primary industry sector. And of course we've moved our focus to ensuring that we work on finding, enhancing those live export markets, which we know are so critical for us into the future, something that we need to guard nearly and dearly. We think there is much that can be done to improve the resilience and investment readiness of our enterprises by encouraging a focus on the business management and production improvements that improve enterprise performance. We will do this by supporting product and market diversification to enable enterprise growth, from feasibility assessments through to promoting sound investment opportunities. Of course, the success of our enterprises is dependent on markets and reliable trade. Our focus here is very much around developing new and viable export markets, maintaining and growing our existing markets and facilitating supply chain efficiencies. Importantly, we are also promoting Northern Australia as a supplier of choice, including for high quality and high value agricultural products, and attracting investment to grow our live cattle industry and the agriculture sector. When these days, in fact for the past few years really, as I travel overseas, not only do I promote the Northern Territory as a safe supplier of high quality cattle, but the focus has always also been on Northern Australia. I remember back in 2012, as a newly appointed minister in the CLP government, realising suddenly that should our live export markets grow to a point where the Northern Territory can't be the only supplier of cattle, that we darn well better get Queensland and Western Australia on board. And that's why when I travel overseas these days, not only do I offer to take other ministers from the jurisdictions with me, but I've been promoting Northern Australia as a greater region, as the supplier of choice for live cattle. Part of the reason for that, or another reason for that, is the fact that when I travel overseas, what I get to understand is that there are many, many delegations that head to these overseas market destinations. You know, someone from Queensland will be there, or Western Australia, or South Australia, Northern Territory certainly. But a lot of the officials we talk to and the governments we talk to don't quite get this interstate competition. But what they do get and what they do understand is when I talk about Northern Australia, because they know what Australia is. And I say, well look, our Northern Australian rangelands are where you need to be focusing to get your supply of good quality cattle. They get that. And so I'm certainly very, very happy to promote Northern Australia in that context as well. But at the same time, we're exploring new ideas to understand and learn from the experience of others so that we can better support the development of agribusiness in the Territory. This LIVEXchange conference is an excellent opportunity to focus on both the issues and the opportunities to be gained. Now, I mentioned biosecurity before, and I'm going to talk a bit more about it because it's critically important. Biosecurity issues are always on our agenda. An example of this is our world-class cattle movement traceability systems using NLIS, or the National Livestock Identification System, you'd all know what that is, which underpin our market assurance credentials and is fundamental to the growing beef and livestock exports. Australia's isolation gives us the fortunate position of being free from many of the world's pests, diseases, weeds and unwanted animal species. As a result, Australia has a much easier access to some overseas markets because it is free from some pests that plague our competitors. However, in the last 2 to 3 decades, the rapid expansion of world trade and passenger movements has fuelled a parallel increase in the spread of many pests around the globe. Fortunately, Australia has strong systems in place to protect our biosecurity, but even so, some pests and diseases occasionally penetrate our border controls and cause outbreaks, and new pests can have a devastating effect on our industries. So protecting our biosecurity is indeed a major challenge that has benefits for all of Australian society. The challenge is always on with biosecurity, and the challenge exists not only for government but for the industry as well, and certainly industry has an enormous role to play in making sure that you adopt practices and procedures that protect your particular patch from biosecurity incursions. The introduction by the Australian Government of SCAS ensures animals in Australian exporter supply chains are treated in line with internationally accepted World Organisation for Animal Health, Animal Welfare standards. The Australian Government is continually improving the SCAS system, and SCAS is now an integral component of the Australian live export trade. This is a positive step in ensuring good animal welfare outcomes, and adherence to SCAS is critical to the ongoing success and long-term viability of our live export trade. And this is something that I talk about on each and every trade mission that I undertake, telling every level that I can get to, whether it be an importer, whether it be a feedlotter, whether it be a senior government minister, just how important SCAS is and compliance of SCAS is to make sure that we have a viable trade going forward. The bottom line is, for many of those receiving countries, non-compliance with SCAS means that they won't be able to receive the high-quality Australian cattle that we know that they deserve and need and want. So that needs to resonate in amongst the supply chains, particularly in the overseas part of the supply chain. The live export industry, as I said earlier, is a significant contributor to the NT economy, and the NT government is extremely committed to expanding this valuable industry. But how far can we expand? I think that the industry, given the focus by government on improving the way operations occur and the support that our department is giving you, I think industry can probably expand 50%. But when you look a little bit further than that, and I'm going to hark back to what I said earlier, the pastoral estate of the Northern Territory only represents about 44% of our land mass. What of the other part? What of the other, well, let's say 50%? A large proportion of that, nearly all of it probably, is Aboriginal land. And Aboriginal land most certainly contains within it some areas of extremely productive rangelands that could be used for cattle production. So I certainly believe it's within the realms of possibility for the Northern Territory to expand its industry by 100%. As long as we get those settings right with market development, biosecurity and enterprise development, but also making sure that the decision makers who look after us, stewards of Aboriginal land, make sure that they do their bit to promote enterprise development there. And I do, I have these conversations regularly enough with all manner of people, but certainly with the land councils, to make sure that they are on board to develop prosperity for their own people. I was talking to a pastoralist just the other day, and we were talking about expansion of their particular enterprise. And expansion on that pastoral property, which employed a number of Indigenous people, meant that the Indigenous employment was going to jump from 5 people or 8 people up to 20. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but for those additional 12 or 15 people, it does mean a lot. And if that's replicated across the Northern Territory in other areas, other Indigenous areas, then there is no doubt in my mind that there's enormous opportunities there for more Indigenous people to be engaged in the industry and bring prosperity to themselves and also to their families. And we know that a long-term viable and sustainable trade and an industry sitting behind it will mean that those jobs will be there for themselves, but will also be there for their children and potentially their grandchildren as well. I and my department have been involved in the development of new markets for Territory cattle throughout Southeast Asia over many years. And since 2012, we have focused on the live trade, working in collaboration with the NT LEA, other government agencies, MLA and the NTCA to grow new markets. The NT government clearly recognises the critical, the critical role that markets have in sustaining and growing our industry and making it more resilient. I'm particularly committed to growing a truly diversified market where we are not reliant on one single import destination, and that's part of the problem I think we faced in 2011 with the live cattle suspension. There were very little other markets to speak of when the trade to Indonesia was suspended for that time. During my term as the Minister for Primary Industry and Fisheries, I've led many trade missions to Indonesia, to Vietnam, to Thailand, Cambodia and also the Philippines. Earlier this year, I led a joint Queensland and Northern Territory ministerial and industry delegation to Indonesia, accompanied by the Queensland Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, the Honourable Bill Byrne. We also took with us senior Queensland and NT government officers and representatives from the NTLEA and the NTCA, and that's not the first of those missions. There was also another one a year and a half or so before with the former Minister from Queensland when he came on one of those trips. This visit was very successful and highly productive, presenting a strong bipartisan message of Northern Australia's willingness to work together and aimed at re-establishing the relationship between Northern Australia and, of course, the Indonesian government. These visits have reinforced that there is a lot to be positive about in the relationship and in relation to our industry and the trade between Indonesia and the Northern Territory. And on that particular trip, when I was talking to industry, to the NTCA and the NTLEA, I asked, what's the biggest message that you want me to take to the Indonesian government? So I had meetings with three quite senior Indonesian ministers while I was there. And the strongest message that I was asked to convey was around annual quotas. So I took that message to the Trade Minister. I also had a meeting with the Minister for Economic Affairs and presented that as an option for the Indonesian government to consider and touted what I thought were some advantages to Indonesia, because they've always got to find what advantage it is for them to have annual quotas or to change the way they operate. And I touted the positive side of having annual quotas, not only for them, but also for the industry and for pastoralists across Northern Australia. So since that time, of course, we've heard more good news about annual quotas, and I really do commend Barnaby Joyce and Andrew Robb for the work they've done to promote that particular line of thinking with the Indonesian government as well. And hopefully, I'm not sure if we've actually had an absolutely firm decision about annual quotas, but I'm sure that it's still being given some good consideration. Discussions with government and industry representatives during those trips were encouraging and consistent with the forecast for strong growth in the global demand for agricultural product. I also led a delegation to the Philippines, Thailand and Vietnam this year, where we gained a greater understanding of the market opportunities for these countries and of course recognising that Vietnam is becoming an increasingly important market destination for northern cattle and has grown now to the second largest destination for export cattle out of the Northern Territory. The continued engagement and relationship building over the past 18 months has seen a significant increase in market access activity in the Southeast Asian region, including other places like Thailand and Cambodia, and of course with China. And I have travelled to many of our live export markets specifically to continue to build relationships and honour the Territory Government's election commitment in 2012 to re-engage with industry and bring it back from the brink. Indonesia is our largest overseas live export market, and as I said, Vietnam now our second largest. And I will continue to actively engage with and support these markets in any way that I can. There have, of course, been some challenges along the way, such as the temporary trade suspension in 2011, changes in quota announced by Indonesia earlier this year. But we'll work through those. Those are just speed bumps in the road on a path to greater prosperity. So it is important that we continue to work together to build and further cement our relationships with our trading partners through delegations and collaborative activities, including technical support and assistance that encourage existing and new markets to engage with Australia. The success of our live export industry in overcoming these challenges and achieving recent record numbers in live exports is by no means an accident. It is a testament to strong leadership, strategic focus and hard work and determination, particularly by our exporters, importers and our pastoralists. It is equally important that we continue to work together to build and further cement those relationships. As is the theme of this conference, I'm only too aware that relationships and networks are an integral element of doing business. There are many aspects to ensure our livestock industry remains a safe, reliable and secure export product. This LIVEXchange conference gathers together like-minded people and is an excellent opportunity to identify the potential issues, discuss solutions and adopt actions to ensure we continue to build on our previous successes. And when I say we, I mean everybody in industry and a government that is supportive of the industry as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoy the remainder of the conference and look forward to catching up with you throughout the day and this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Willem. Fantastic. Thanks very much.